Hello my fellow travelers, and welcome to another travel guide here from Tales from the Road. I'm Pierce, thanks for stopping by. Today I'm in Istanbul, the center of the old world, a city with so much history. It's such an incredible place, and particularly it's one of my favorite cities in the entire world. That being said, this is a travel guide. I'm going to tell you everything you need to know before you go, so that you can have an amazing time in this gem but complicated mess of an international mega city. If that sounds good, let's do it.
This video is sponsored by italki.
As we always do, before we get into the practical information, let me tell you a little bit about the history of Istanbul. To start this history section, I'm in this little park in Karaköy, which is a little peninsula that faces right on the water, with an amazing view of old Eminönü, which is the oldest part of Istanbul. Istanbul sits in something called the Bosporus Strait, or we can also call it the Golden Horn, and this is this area right over here. The Bosporus Strait is in the middle of everything, as Turkey, the Anatolian Peninsula, and the Balkan Peninsula come together right here. Asia to the east and Europe to the west. That being said, many different people have called this land home, and many people have been in Istanbul, Constantinople, Byzantium, and whatever cities were here on the Golden Horn before that. For me, when I look out on this very beautiful scene, the water, the mosques, the old buildings, the new technology here on the bridge, I just think of layers of history, layers of people, layers of tradition and culture and different sorts of practices. And for me, I think that's the most important part about Istanbul, is you have to realize that this city is living, breathing history, and for me it's a bit overwhelming to understand such a deep and robust historical place. But we have to do it. A brief history of Istanbul goes something like this. People have been moving through this Bosporus Strait, connecting the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea through the Sea of Marmara for thousands and thousands of years. It's been connecting people from the east to the west, from the Middle East to North Africa to Central Europe and beyond. So that means you have a lot of people coming through this area. Before the Turkish national identity that was established through the Ottoman conquests of the mid-1400s, that's really the Turkey that we see today. This land was quite Greek and quite Roman for thousands of years, with many different tribal groups calling this area home. This city first came to robust greatness under the Byzantines. The Byzantines were the Eastern Roman Empire. They spoke Greek, they were Orthodox Christian, and they built some of the most amazing buildings over here. Cisterns and chapels, and the largest building in the known world, the Hagia Sophia, which is just over here, if you can see these two little dots here. That being said, modern-day Istanbul is all about the Ottoman conquest of the city. The Ottomans came into the Anatolian Peninsula, coming in hot from Central Asia, bringing Islam, bringing Turkic culture, bringing the Turkish language, and all of that jazz. As they came in, Istanbul was the prize city that they really wanted to get. Once they had Istanbul, they could do anything, because no one was able to take Constantinople from the Byzantines, basically in the history of the Byzantine Empire. A lot of people tried, everybody failed. But from this launching point right here, and I think this is why this stuff is so cool. We don't have this in the US in the same context. From this launching point, from Karaköy, the Ottomans, Mehmet II, the conqueror of Istanbul for the Turks, was looking at Byzantium and said, I will be having that. And the rest is history. Constantine becomes Istanbul. The Roman Catholic tradition is replaced with Turkish, Islamic tradition in a lot of ways, and the Ottoman Empire reigns here until modern-day Turkey takes it over, with Istanbul being its most important city. While it was the most important city for a long period of time, the Turks decided to put their capital somewhere else, maybe a little bit more strategic, maybe a little bit more safeguard in Ankara, but that doesn't mean Istanbul has faded. Istanbul is one of the biggest cities in the world. It's one of the most deeply rich historical, cultural cities that you'll ever visit, and there is endless amounts of things to do in this city. That being said, I want to give you my tips and tricks for Istanbul. How can we conquer it? How can we have a good time? How can we stay safe? And how can we do something that's not super touristy and boring? If you're down for that, let's do some practical information. So, getting into the practical information, you're gonna need a visa when you come to Turkey. If you're American, there's two options for you if you want to come to this beautiful place. Number one, you can get an e-visa before you go. You go to the Turkish site, which I'll have in the link below. You pay $50 US, put in all your passport information, and you get a visa that you have to print and then show them when you come through customs. It's like a little paper that you'll print, and you get to stay in Turkey for 90 days. That you can do. It's a little bit more expensive, but there's also an easier way, which is just visa on arrival if you arrive to some major airports in Turkey. They have a visa on arrival center. You can just go to like this little box, you talk to a person, you basically can buy this little visa stamp, they put it into your passport, and it's the same thing, but it's only $30 US instead of 50. Just check that the airport that you fly into has visa on arrival. Both the major airports of Istanbul, Sabiha Gökçe and Istanbul Airport have them, so that's not an issue. It's cheaper, it's easier, and it's the one that I prefer. Next on the list, we need to talk about money. The Turkish use the Turkish lira, and the Turkish lira right now is trading about 27 lira to $1 US. You can see some prices here for reference. You know, you can buy some Turkish delights for 79 lira for a kilo. That's a lot of sugar, and you can get a kilo of hazelnuts for 200 lira, which is just about $8. The important thing to remember about Istanbul is it can be really expensive or really cheap because of the really bad inflation that's happening in Turkey. They've had about 100% inflation in the last year, I believe, because when I was here last year, it was about 13 or 14, and now it's almost 30. So about 100% inflation. What that means is that some stuff is really oddly expensive. Like beef is also the same price that it is in the United States per pound, but some things like vegetables, because they're grown locally here, are still really cheap. Some stores you can go to are really cheap. You can get a lot of stuff for like no money at all, but you can also go to restaurants and you can drop 50 to 70 euros without really trying. It really just depends where you are. Since this is more of a tourist area, the price is higher. Like, I don't think local Turkish people are paying 9 euros for lokum or the Turkish delight, or 450 lira, which is like 20 euros for a kilo of baklava. The locals would go to a more normal place for this, but maybe that's just the reality. Basically in Turkey, it's just really expensive in general. So for local people, and a lot of people are complaining that they can't go out, they can't buy stuff like they used to, they can't afford certain ingredients. It's like a big problem. So Istanbul, because it's the place with the most money and the most tourists, I think this pushes the difference probably more than other areas of Turkey just by the sheer amount of tourists with money to spend. So just be careful where you go, because if it feels too expensive, it probably is. And if it feels too cheap, maybe give the guy a tip or something, just because like people are struggling and they need a little help. So that's my 2 cents. Transportation. Istanbul, being a city of 20 million people, has to have a kick-ass transportation system. So for you as a tourist, you have a lot of options. Number one, buses. If you're flying to an Istanbul airport, you're either flying to Istanbul, which is on the European side, the big, massive airport that super interconnects much of international transit today, at least if you're flying through this general area. Number two, you're flying to Sabiha Gökçe, which is on the Asian side. It's a smaller airport, still pretty big, but if you're coming to any part of the city from the airports, you're going to want to take either a bus. The buses are good, they're pretty cheap, between like 5 and 8 euros to get to whatever part of the city you're getting to, called Hava Bus and Ist Bus, or Hava Ist. Both of those work really well. If you're coming from Sabiha, the smaller airport, you can take a metro directly into the major part of the city and then transit on the metro there. If you're coming from the major airport, everything is fine. Just be careful of taxis. Taxis are the big ripoff in Istanbul. They're super, super unreliable. They are known for overcharging tourists by 2 times, 5 times, 10 times the normal price. So there is Uber here. Take an Uber, take a bus, take some sort of taxi that's paid for and verified by the city. Do not just get into a taxi all random in Istanbul. It's like the worst idea that you could do and the easiest way to lose your money. While you have buses and metros that you have in most cities, the best thing of Istanbul and the most interesting thing is that the city is cut in two by the Bosporus Strait, as I said earlier. So you have a big amount of ferries to take you to various parts of the city. The best way to get around Istanbul is with the Istanbul Card. It's like a swipe card. You pay 70 lira, which is about €2.50, or $2, $3, something like that. And then you can use that card to get on. It's like a recharge card, very easy to use. And it's cheaper than if you pay for tickets individually. For me, traveling by ferry is easily one of the best modes of transportation in the entire world, and it's the best way to get to, though, Istanbul. You can see its historic centers, you can see the new parts of the city, and you can just enjoy a really nice, relaxing little pause to your otherwise probably pretty busy trip in Istanbul. So how about safety? When you're walking through Istanbul, especially in the more touristy areas or in the older areas, you're gonna have a lot of people around you. That's like just a given, it's gonna happen. So what I always recommend is make sure you know where your pockets are, make sure you know where your wallet is, and always watch out for people who are coming up to you or being a little weird, because as you can see here, there is a lot of people, and it's really easy to get pickpocketed when you have this many people in one area. So just be careful, stay aware. Never normally that much of an issue as long as you're on top of your stuff. That being said, there are also some scams in Istanbul you want to watch out for. If anyone, comes up to you for basically no reason and is offering you something, not the food guys, because the food guys want you to try the food so that you buy the food. If anyone else comes up for you for some reason, probably just tell them to go away, just because it's easier to do that way. And then also for example, there's a simple scam in Istanbul where basically there's shoe shine guys. I don't see a shoe shine guy here, but shoe shine guys, like they throw out their like little brush kind of to make you feel that you knocked it out of their hand or something, and then they shine your shoe and then they want money. So it's a scam for them to get money. The whole thing with Turkey is if it seems too expensive, don't pay it. If it seems out of the ordinary for what it should be, don't pay it. Don't let people pressure you into buying anything that you don't want. And of course, make sure you know where your wallet and phone are at all times, because there's a lot of stuff going on. So now let's talk about the language of Turkey. People in Turkey speak Turkish. Turkish is a Central Asian language very similar to Kyrgyz, Kazakh, Uzbek, and the other languages of the Central Asian steppe. The Ottomans brought it when they were invading this land, and since they took over Turkey, they brought the language with them. So, as I do before I travel to places, I like to learn at least a little bit of the language to get by. And because people here in Istanbul do not speak English that well, it makes your life a lot easier if you know a little bit of language before you arrive. The question is, what is the best way to learn a language? Well, my friends, let me tell you about the sponsor of this video, italki, a company that I've both used for language learning and actually worked for as an English language tutor. italki is a global language learning community that specializes in one-on-one student-to-teacher interactions from certified native teachers from various languages from around the world. So when I knew I was coming to Turkey, I went on italki and I needed to find a Turkish tutor. Now there were many to select from, and you can watch videos, you can sort of get the background story of these different tutors, pick one, book a time, and schedule your first lesson so you can start learning. It's just that simple.
On italki, I can choose the teacher and pick the date and the time that I want to have the lesson. They have a bunch of cool features, like I can choose the type of lesson I want to have. I can also see what other language the teacher speaks to make sure that I'll be able to communicate if I'm a beginner. And I can even see how much I want to pay. The starting price for a basic lesson would be only $5. Also, the best thing about italki is that you pay per lesson. There's no subscription, no commitment. Also, italki has more than 150 languages for you to choose from. It has the largest variety of languages taught anywhere online. So, click the link below in our description to try out italki by using my promo code TAILS5 to get an extra $5 credit on your first lesson. This discount is only available to the first 50 users. Because I knew I was coming to Turkey, I found my teacher Yusuf on italki. With the help of Yusuf, we took my non-existent Turkish to being pretty bad, but just enough to get by for basic conversation in Istanbul.
So, Türk yemeği yapıyorum.
Yeah. Okay, tamam. Ne yapıyorsun?
Benim evim.
Evimde. Okay. At my house. Okay.
Yeah. Evimde.
Okay. Ne yemeği yapıyorsun?
Köfte
Tamam.
seviyorum.
Tamam.
And İmam bayıldı.
İmam bayıldı? Okay.
İmam
Tamam.
bayıldı.
Evet. Evet, tamam, süper. Okay. Okay, harika. You're okay. You speak Turkish. That's enough for communication, you know?
So now I'm going to put what I've learned in the classroom with my various Turkish teachers to the test here in Istanbul. I'm feeling ready, I'm feeling loose. So behind me is a Turkish coffee cafe. My goal is to order a Turkish coffee in just Turkish and then ask the owner a couple questions about his life, about Turkish coffee, and anything else I can answer in a sort of conversation. I don't speak very good Turkish, but I feel like I know enough to try. So, Bizim Cafe, I'm coming for you. Nasılsın?
Sağ ol.
Sağ ol.
Sen nasılsın?
İyiyim, iyiyim.
Allah iyilik versin. Memleket neresi?
Memleket?
Where are you from?
Amerikan yorum.
Amerika. New York.
New Mexico.
Mexico.
New Mexico.
Amerika.
Amerika. İstanbul'da bir ay yaşıyorum.
Bir ayda bu kadar Türkçe mi öğrendin?
Ya biraz.
Süper.
Teşekkürler. Türkçe çok zor.
Aslında çok kolay da.
Çok kolay.
Az kelime az.
Az.
Kelime az.
Okay. Neredesin? İstanbul?
Yok.
Yok.
Malatya.
Malatya. Okay. On the sea. Denizli. No.
Anadolu.
Anadolu. Okay. Türk kahvesi seviyorsun? Okay.
Günde de 4 tane içiyor.
Okay.
Oh.
Hazırsın. Çok güzel. Teşekkürler abi. So in my really bad Turkish, we were even talking about politics and how expensive Turkey has gotten for local people and inflation, all from italki. Thank you, italki. So now onto my favorite part of any guide I make. It is food, and so I've come to a little Turkish cafe, a börek cize, a place that makes börek, which is basically, like you can see here, some sort of like phyllo dough stuffed with different sorts of meats, cheeses, spinach, whatever you want. Absolutely delicious. And let me tell you a little bit about the food you can get in Istanbul. Istanbul is really cool when it comes to food because you can get any kind of food basically that is in Turkey or in the Middle East here in Istanbul, because there's so many immigrants that come here from all around the Middle East and like the Balkan Peninsula and North Africa. And then also all of the Turks from all over Turkey come here specifically for jobs. So you can find all of the really traditional types of food. Like if you want food from Gaziantep, which is a famous food city in the south of Turkey, you can find a authentic Gaziantep baklava guy. If you want food from the north, the Black Sea, you can find a Samsun specific food guy who comes from the Black Sea. It's really cool. What I can say is a recommendation for food in Istanbul, because Istanbul doesn't really have like a dish that is Istanbul, like that is the dish of the city. What I would say is that just go on streets and try whatever you can. So the cool part about how Turkish little restaurants work is every restaurant does like 2 or 3 things really well, and then the restaurant next to it does something completely different. So it's a good food tour city. You can start here, you can hop here. So this place, they do tea, börek, and pide. And then you can go to a kebab place, and then you can go to a fish place, and then you can go to a dessert place and do the full circle. Turkish food is so damn good, you're never gonna have anything that's bad. And in the summer when it's hot, they do fresh juice. So the best thing you can get here is the currant, black currant, or you can get pomegranate, like freshly squeezed pomegranate juice. Absolutely phenomenal. The streets of Istanbul are full of flavor. The food is relatively cheap, unless you go to like really fancy restaurants. So like this little plate of food, which they have as a normal breakfast, cost me $1.80, something like that. And the tea is normally like 50 cents, 40 cents. So you can try a lot of stuff, even if you're not on a big budget. Now we're on to my recommended things to do in Istanbul, and I'm gonna do this differently than I normally do in my other travel guides. There's big lists online of all the things you can see and do in Istanbul. I'm not gonna tell you those things. It's not important for us right now. What I am gonna tell you is that Istanbul is deeply special, and every corner holds something unique and interesting. So when you travel to Istanbul, take a breath away from being a tourist of, I need to see this mosque, I need to see this church, I need to do the boat ride, I need to do this and that. Istanbul's great for that. There's plenty of stuff you can do. They have great museums, they have great historical, like, things you can do, great attractions. You know, you'll fill some days here, no problem. My thing is, get out of your comfort zone. Try a dish you've never heard of. Try an activity that might push you out of your comfort zone, like going to a Turkish hammam with local people. Not like a fancy one, but like a local one. Try some street food. Just see what people are selling. Go wander in the market. aimlessly, just looking, listen to the streets. Sometimes you can even close your eyes, be careful of, you know, pickpockets and stuff. Close your eyes and absorb what's around you. You're in a city with thousands of years of history at the center of the world. So just take a minute to breathe, to think, to listen, and to observe. The best people watching city in the world, honestly. One of the best food cities in the world. One of the best places to see history and all that stuff. So, of course I could give you a general list. You can find that online. I just say, become part of the city. Take a couple moments every day outside of touristing to appreciate the city for what it is, to look, to listen, to be a part of the streets, and of course, try new things, try interesting things. This is the best place to do it, and there's no excuse not to. So that being said, I'm headed back to my boat over here. The sun is starting to get low right here by the new mosque of Eminönü, and I want to say thank you guys for watching. I hope all the information I tell you is helpful. I really try hard to give you my authentic and unique sort of perspective on traveling, because I am not your typical tourist, and that's important. If you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, always helpful for me. I'm cooking on my Instagram, BJ Food Blog, you can find it there. National dishes from all around the world. I cooked imam bayıldı, the sleeping imam, and you can hear that story on Instagram. Very fun dish with eggplant, you should give it a try. I have lots of other videos and content about Istanbul and Turkey in general, as I've been here many times, and those videos will be linked below as well. So, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Görüşürüz from Istanbul.